What's up? Welcome to a new episode of Movie Schmovie. This is episode 342. My name is Steve. I'm one of the co-hosts, and as always, I'm joined by
Ron.
And John.
Also known by, if you're following the YouTube feed of this podcast, for the video element, our newly anointed Obi-Wan Kenobi.
Yes.
I didn't get the memo. We should have named ourselves something, tying into some of the topical things we're going to be hitting this episode. But good to see you, Obi-Wan.
It's actually just Ben right now. But
it's just Ben. Oh, okay. So we'll roll
I'm
in and out of that.
I'm honestly working through a lot of stuff right now. So
You let us know when you're comfortable with it, okay?
it's a developing situation. Yeah. Okay.
Yeah.
Thank you. I respect that.
Understood. So yeah, we're gonna go through a couple new items today. Like we got a new Miss Marvel show on Disney Plus that started this week. We've got a new episode of Obi-Wan Kenobi on Disney Plus as well. And I think you guys are going to talk about a little bit about the episode 4 of The Boys season 3, which is on Amazon Prime. We'll get to those in a moment, but at the top of the episode, we wanted to talk a couple trailers that came out, some as recently as today, or the day we're recording the episode, which is Wednesday. Actually, a couple of them came out today, but let's talk about the Black Adam trailer that finally came out. The Warner Brothers, Dwayne "The Rock" Johnson, huge movie that's coming out in October. Could you be less interested in this movie?
I didn't even watch the trailer.
Okay. Well, then maybe it's a yes. Maybe it's a no for you. But I mean, like,
it's not.
I guess I could watch the trailer and then be less interested. You know what I mean? Than I theoretically am right now.
True.
But to not even want to watch the trailer was definitely. But I thought I would. I just didn't get around to it. So it's not like I decided I was never going to watch it.
That's a good litmus though. Like, if you haven't seen the trailer, like, where are you on the Black Adam of it all? Like, are you excited to see this? Do you, beyond your awareness of the character, just the marketing, the word about this, the way that it's been promoted by The Rock or Dwayne Johnson, are you interested in this movie, John? Just even not seeing the trailer?
I am interested in Pierce Brosnan as Dr. Fate.
Okay. End of sentence. Got it.
Yes. No, honestly, that's the element that makes me the most interested. Like the idea that they're building some larger mythology with like a group of characters around this character that I do not give a shit about. Like I've never cared about Black Adam from the comics, nor do I feel like it was even a name that I heard mentioned that much in the 20-year span that I was like really into comics, or maybe that's not quite true. The 10-year span that I was really into them. So if he's some kind of classic character, I don't know his lore. I was a bit more of a Marvel guy than a DC guy, though, so it's possible that it just kind of slipped through the cracks. I feel like there's something, we've talked about it before on this show, there's something kind of grating on my nerves about just the way they have talked up this character, trying to drum up excitement about this thing that many of these comic book movies have come out a character we didn't care about, and then the movie made us have an investment in them. So that's not a mark against the movie. But as far as like the type of movie it seems to be, and the fact that it's got this weird ego stroking thing for The Rock, I don't know. There's something about it that kind of turns me off. But I'm sure that has nothing to do with the story they're trying to tell.
Right.
So yeah, that's where I am with it. I'm like, yes, I definitely did not watch the trailer when I could have, like 10 different times today that I had time to watch the trailer, and I didn't do it. So that's where my interest level is.
What about you, Ronald?
I think part of my issue, there's two things. The Rock might be too perfect of a guy to cast for a superhero. That's one.
Okay.
And two, because of that, the conflict is not there. Because of the ego stroke thing that you're talking about, because this is in his wheelhouse, because this is like his production team, his people, something about the way they're presenting his conflict, the one that's on the screen is his son dying, sacrificing himself for Black Adam. There's something about it that seems like he's too like perfect in that scene, or like I feel like if it was on the hands of somebody else, the conflict would be a little more intense. And like I said, The Rock is almost too perfect of a person. Like he didn't have to train any extra that he did for this role. He was just himself, and they casted him. he didn't have to do any extra DC training, or if he ever did a Marvel, he wouldn't have to do.
He found a couple of new muscles somewhere, because you can see like he did do the training you're saying he didn't need to do, which is true. But you're right, he already had the physique of one of these drawings, if not more, almost more cartoonish than a drawing. You know,
The Rock is actually bigger when he was wrestling than he is now, which is even weirder to think about. Like, he's leaner now, which is even that's a strange thing to think about. He's more defined. But he was way bigger as a wrestler.
He was like a big slab of meat before, and now he's got that chisel.
Now he's all defined, but that's the weird thing about him, man. Like, I went from like him being this person I was rooting for to him being like the man. He's the man now,
right?
And I didn't want it to be like that. I don't know what point he started to be the man. Like, he started to be. It's weird because I'm rooting for Batista more than I'm rooting for The Rock, and I love The Rock's wrestling career. Like, I'm obsessed with The Rock's wrestling career and the beginning of his acting career. Even though he made a bunch of shitty movies, like, I've rooted for him. So something's happened. He's made a turn. And it's irritating the hell out of me, even watching.
What's your favorite Rock? My voice cracked for some reason. I guess my voice cracked because I'm nervous that The Rock is going to come and like break me in half.
He does listen to the pods. So
you're not going to believe it. You're not going to believe. If you're asking me what I think you're asking me, you're not going to believe it.
What's your favorite Rock
movie?
Yeah,
Southland Tales.
Oh,
Richard Kelly. That's a weird one, man. But it was him.
I got Hit and Run as my favorite, which maybe that's a weird one too.
That's not a bad one though.
I got Pain and Gain.
Oh, Pain and Gain. That's what I meant to say.
Come on. I mean, yes.
Is he in a movie called Hit and Run too, by any chance?
But he was in that one called like The Rundown.
No, that one was fun. With Sean
that's
William
what
Scott.
I thought. I thought you were talking about the. I love that movie.
No, I meant Pain and Gain. Thank you, Steve.
I thought you were talking about. I thought you were talking about The Rundown.
No, I completely Hit and Run is definitely a movie, and it does.
That's a Dax Shepard, Kristen Bell movie.
Okay, not the movie. That's my favorite Rock movie.
And it's the fact that he's not in it is what you.
I love it. Every minute of that movie, I just think, what if Dwayne Johnson were here? What would he do?
Yeah.
Oh, you meant Dwayne the Rock Johnson. You just didn't mean like rocks in the background. That's
now that you said that. I actually like it when there's a little bit of
rocks.
A rock and roll soundtrack. Is really what I was talking about.
That too.
But yes, Pain and Gain was the movie where I realized that he could be good and not play the kind of ego-stroking character that we're talking about.
Exactly.
That was a bit more. He was at the mercy of a director and a story, and he played a character, and I think that appealed to me.
I agree with you. Yeah, that's
I like the artsy
contest.
I like him artsy, but I also like Pain and Gain. Pain and Gain is his best, but I liked Southland Tales just because it was like the first time that I realized that he could be an actor. It was the first time that I saw him in a thing that it felt like he wasn't being cast solely because he was The Rock. It was it was just a strange casting, and it was just like, you could be perfect for this.
And the whole movie is just like a big swing too. Like, and he's game for it in that movie for sure. However you feel about that movie, but I don't know. Something about this one I have zero interest in it. Like, I was talking among some friends, one of them being the friend of the pod, Amanda.
Hey, Amanda.
She made the point, which is kind of exactly what I feel, is that like this DC idea of like these overpowered demigod heroes, and like it ties to what you're saying, Rana, which is simply that not only is that the thing with the character that they're selling or that we're going for in the story, and every piece of this trailer is just like it just screams overpowered, indestructible. What's the conflict? What's the threat? And what you're describing about The Rock physically and like his character, his charisma, his everything, it's just like that just takes it exponentially. Like, it's just like it makes that problem for me. It makes that problem even worse because I think there's no like vulnerability in who they cast to be this overpowered hero.
Exactly.
To really kind of make me wonder how they could approach it. Instead, like, again, everyone has said it in some way. It's like you've cast like the superhero of male actors on the scene right now to play this demigod. And it's just like, it's cool because he physically is, he looks like, a Greek, or he looks like a god, but like there's something, like, I don't know. And
something's off.
The similarities to like Shazam, it's kind of weird. and like it's like I know there's some connection there, but I don't know. I mean, obviously, I'm gonna still check it out of
Yeah.
curiosity, but for all the the promotion and like he's his own, like he's a walking hype machine every which way you can like find him. He's talking about this movie, and for this like to be the big reveal, I don't think the trailer really is all that great as a trailer itself. But I mean, I don't think it does anything for the movie to try to get me interested. If I was concerned that it would just be like The Rock being indestructible, but that's a selling point to an audience, but not to me personally. I don't think.
But there's something even weirder about this. They've been sitting on this trailer since CinemaCon.
Right.
Which is strange. Like, if you wanted to get this thing out, you would have put this shit out, immediately. Like,
did they not adjust their slate at some point though? Did they not have a lot of stuff that? I feel like there was that trailer that came out early in the year that was like all the DC movies that are coming out this year, and then they shortly after that announced that Flash, I think, or something had gotten bumped back. Did everything fall back a little bit? Is that maybe a reason why they had it ready and then or did this one not move? I honestly, I'm talking out of my ass right now.
It was still coming out this year, but you might be right. Like, I think that something got rearranged. Like, I think it was supposed to come out a little earlier. I think you're absolutely.
It was supposed to come out in July.
Okay, yeah. So,
but things move, and it's like it was literally like a week or two after Thor: Love and Thunder, and it was just like, they everything basically moved. That, The Flash, Aquaman, a lot of their movies just shuffled around the whole year. So
no, I am really smart. I was intelligent.
No question.
No, you weren't wrong about that, man. So
what a relief.
It's a strange thing, and I don't.
Yeah.
Even if they didn't have a date for it, it feels like they would have put something out about it. And that preview that they showed before was just him being weird in a cave.
Yeah.
I think that
you said something to me, Ronald, and maybe you said it on the show that was funny. You were like, they think they can get me excited about this movie by showing me this scene of him in a cave. And I was just like, well, there's more than just that. But it was also sort of like, it was weird to have this tease that was this kind of weird moment that, again, it seems like it's fueled by this belief that we're all just slobbering and ready for this thing. But I don't know. Maybe they know they haven't created that kind of demand for it yet.
So here's
I think it's gonna bomb, man. I really do.
Rock's brain about movies is in the 90s. His body is in 2021, 2022. You know what I mean? Like,
his body's 1 year behind. I like that.
Yeah. There's something really off about the way that he thinks that a blockbuster should go that feels very reminiscent of things we would have been impressed about. Like, when The Shadow was out. If this was out when The Shadow came out, I'd be like, oh, shit.
Oh my God, yeah.
Oh, I would have jizzed my pants, man. But because it's now, and people, the curtain, it has been lifted, and there's a level of transparency that we have as fans. There's all different kinds of superheroes that we watched.
Yeah.
Some that we're going to talk about today. That just has kind of dissected all the bullshit that we've seen from the 90s. And he doesn't seem to know that.
It's true. It's like this project seems to be trading on the idea of like that it's going to be awesome to see The Rock like look, like you said, like a god, and have this, like, it's almost about how well do they achieve this look and this feel, and how badass does it look. Because otherwise, the story, I mean, again, it might have all this surprising, like, humor and life in it, or something engaging that brings us in. But the fact that it's, from what you were saying about, like, the avenging his son stuff, that this all sounds like it's like that kind of quasi-Shakespearean style of, like, superhero story. It's gonna have, like, a huge mythology aspect to it. So, and I think you're right, Steve, too, that tying it, I mean, I've always known this character had kind of a similar origin. He's like a different spin on Shazam, or he has a tie to the same energy or something. But I think that movie was so lighthearted and so its own thing. It's interesting to imagine that this is somehow, like, that, Black Adam was a villain to Shazam. and this is the route they're taking to establish him. It tonally almost seems like it wouldn't fit with Shazam. But again, not having seen the trailer, maybe I'm wrong about the tone. But I've gotten the impression that they want this to feel a little darker, a little bit more brutal or gritty or something. But maybe that's not what it is. No, you're shaking your head.
He punched a man to heaven. He punched a man like Popeye. Like it.
He punched him out to sea.
He punched him out to like Popeye. He just like just punched him, and not only did he just fly, his body flipped into the water. So yeah, I don't know what they're going for.
This movie's so weird to me. Like
you think it's gonna bomb?
I'm so curious to see what this does because a really big part of me, for as big of a star as Dwayne Johnson is, and like he has some really big hits under his belt. Again, and I'll mention this because I want to talk a little bit. I finally saw Top Gun Maverick. Like I really feel like a lot of his biggest hits are like IP, are developed IP, and this is one of them.
Yeah.
But it's like it's a little lesser known. It's not.
He has more control over it. He has more control.
But I mean, like, I feel like, Jumanjis, they're huge. They also have Kevin Hart. They also have Jack Black. They also have, whoever you want to pick out. Jungle Cruise.
But they're well written. They're well written, though.
But my point, though, is that like he's kind of in these things with other people, where like with all their powers combined, these things are successful, and he's a huge star. He's arguably the biggest star right now. But I just feel like I don't know that I subscribe to the idea anymore that like these people really open movies still. And I feel like the Black Adam not being like, kind of like a B, I don't even know, maybe C tier DC hero, trying to really use that as a launch when DC is having trouble kind of having any kind of consistency with their movies and consistent success with them. It's truly trying to coast on like his star power. And like, that's the interest to me, is just if this movie can overperform in some way, because it does not look like it's going to be I personally don't think it looks good. I don't think I'm concerned about the quality of the movie, but I'd be interested to see if it succeeds. That would be a point in his corner, that like, yes, he can open a movie himself. I don't know that he can open a movie himself. I don't know that even with his success that I'm still convinced that he can open a movie, especially a movie that he's not like paired up with some other big star that is bankable, and a movie that is not like a main DC character, I don't know, but it's something about this just reeks of it being like a possible failure in some way. I don't know. I hope I'm wrong, because like I want movies to do well at the box office like it needs to.
I don't think you're wrong. Man.
Something feels off.
Something's off. And I think some of it is like control, man. Like when we talk about Top Gun, we're talking about a man that's like a calculated genius, like if we're talking about Tom Cruise, we're talking about somebody that has a tried and true record of making stuff that, the Mission Impossible stuff is kind of proof that he could carry these things, right. So I guess when the new Top Gun came, they're like, hey, Tom, what do you want to do? You want to put special cameras and shit all over? You want to do Atmo? He has a prove it. I don't know if The Rock, you're right, but it's shrouded in that success of having other people in it. That's the problem. Because you and I know that, because we watch those movies and we're like, there's other people involved in this.
Yeah.
It's kind of like he's coming to the studio with real data. Like, I made this much money doing this film.
Yeah. I just feel like in general, I'm like very bearish on The Rock right now. I don't know that he's really had like a true hit outside of the Jumanji movie. Outside of the Jumanji movies. Like, I feel like he is like a huge star. He makes a ton of money, and he's got tons of, brands, and he's got some, diversification in terms of what he does. He's got TV, he's got an alcohol line. He's got all these things as he's very, very successful. But I feel bearish on his star power at the movies, at the box office. And I'm very curious to see how this does in theaters. We'll see. We'll find out in October.
Well, while that was happening, I watched the trailer. and I don't really
Oh,
have
no.
anything. I don't really have anything further to
Nothing new?
say. I don't know what that looks like. You know, like I don't know what that movie looks like.
Yeah.
I
Yeah, it looks weird.
last thing I'll say
You
is
know what I mean,
think
Steve? It's like I don't know if it's
Yeah,
It's like
totally.
there were
at
some
this,
shots that looked kind of cool. I'll give it that. There were a few shots that looked kind of cool, but there were other shots that looked really weird and
yeah,
like
not good.
Well, just tonally, I'll be interested to see what they're trying to do with this movie.
He's at the Will Smith point of his career, man. Like, there's nothing wrong with Will Smith, but there was a point where Will Smith thought that his star power kind of superseded good movies. Like, it was like, I'll be in it, so it's going to be good because I'm Will Smith.
Right.
The Rock is at that point now, and it's starting to feel weird because you can feel it in the air that this is going to bomb, man. What is going to save it?
Just an appetite for product. I honestly think that some movies are going to overperform.
You're right.
At the box office over the next 3 to 4 months.
Did that.
Because there's not a ton of stuff coming out, especially like the big blockbusters, you know, like but I don't know, we'll see.
Plus it's coming out in October 21st, so I feel like that is a little bit of a dead spot, maybe, you know, not dead, but like that's one of those like I don't know what else is coming. Maybe I'm wrong, but it feels like it's free and clear of other big movies that are hitting. Like I think the next biggest thing is going to be Wakanda Forever in November, I believe. But I don't know what is like close to that before that. So it does feel like October might be a safer spot for it than the summer when it comes to, you know, like what you're talking about, Steve, which is just okay, people who want a certain kind of movie are going to be at the theater and they're going to see that. They're going to see The Rock, or you know, this trailer may look really interesting to people. I do think if someone's a deep DC fan, they might find it appealing that it looks like you're getting some of these sort of B string, you know, like DC characters that we haven't really seen yet in the movies. So I think there is something appealing about that, going a little deeper into the bench of superheroes, but that's about all that I can say about it.
Dang.
So you also wanted to talk about another trailer that I think we all saw, which is the trailer for is it a miniseries, the Mike Tyson miniseries?
Yeah, it looks like.
I don't know if it's called. Yeah, if it's a mini series, limited series. I don't know how they have it flagged.
Well, but it's a season of a show rather than it's not a movie. I guess was the distinction I was making. So
yeah.
So we talk about a lot of stuff on this. Like we just talked about a movie trailer. So technically, we've covered the movie part of the name of this show. I want anyone who's listening who's like, gosh, they sure talk about a lot of TV shows, and that they don't always call the show TV Schmovie. I just want people to know that if it's anything that's not a movie that we're talking about, it's Schmovie. That's kind of the way I excuse it in my head, is that we talk about movie and we talk about Schmovie. And Schmovie is Schmovie's kind of like the field. That's like everything except for movies, you know. So here comes some Schmovie talk.
It's officially billed as an 8-episode limited series.
Okay.
Yeah.
That we will hopefully have access to early and we'll be able to cover. I cannot. Trevante Rhodes is a great actor to me. I really like him in everything.
What have I seen him in? I didn't hit IMDb.
Moonlight.
Okay,
Moonlight.
There you go. Yeah, that's it.
He showed up for a second in Westworld. For a second.
He was also in not Bird Box, but what was that other Netflix? No, the one with like Machine Gun Kelly was in it.
Oh yeah.
Who I can't fucking stand, but he's in that movie.
You can't stand Machine Gun Kelly?
Oh my god, dude, no. I'm sorry. Nah, man.
Is it the blood?
I mean, that's probably not my major concern. Although that is also kind of disturbing a little bit. But
he has one of the best Eminem disses of all time. It's like one of my favorite songs of all time. But yeah, he's a little. He splits the room for sure.
Yeah, I mean, there's like tons of like
room,
very problematic shit that like is out there about him, and these videos I've seen, I just can't stand it. I just can't.
Oh god.
But anyway, that movie, he's in that movie. I can't remember what it's called, but he's like basically the male lead of that movie.
Yeah.
The one that I can't remember from Netflix.
How do you feel about? I guess the first thing I'm going to ask because there's an elephant in the room.
Oh no,
Jamie Foxx.
It is Bird Box.
It's Bird Box.
No, it's Bird Box. Is
The
Machine
Bird
Gun
Box.
Kelly in that?
Machine
I
Gun
think I,
Kelly's
I
in.
think I think I'm mixing up two movies. I'm thinking I'm mixing up two movies.
Okay.
So
Steve, you're
yeah,
slipping.
Yeah.
take away the Machine Gun Kelly. Although I still maintain
Okay.
I'm not a fan. But yeah,
You're not a fan.
Trevante is in Bird Box.
Okay. Here's the elephant in the room. For the past 3 or 4 years, let's even say 4 or 5, Jamie Foxx has kind of gone on this campaign to talk about his piece of preparing for the Mike Tyson movie that's coming out. That was supposed to come out years ago.
Yeah.
So out of the blue, this amazing trailer comes. This Hulu is kind of the spot for the rip from the headline stuff
They
from
really are. They really
present,
are.
past, present, and it's not only ripped from
You're
the
not going to give
headlines.
him future?
And
Just
the
go ahead and give him
future.
future. Yeah.
There's a quality that Hulu has with all that stuff that this seems to be that seems to have that's carrying on the tradition of the rip from the headline stuff that they've been doing. And I'm really impressed, man. Like I this looks like Mike Tyson is a very interesting figure to me. Like I don't love everything that he's done in his life, but I do love his accepting of how terrible of a person he was at one point. He's been very honest about who he was as a person. Every piece of it, right? And this comeback story of, how he's been this like teddy bear kind of figure with the cartoon and his podcast that he has and his weed ranch and all this stuff. It's interesting, man. And I'm really looking forward to seeing what this show has to offer. And Trevante seems like he is killing it in this trailer.
Interesting.
Man.
It's like an interesting casting because I do think he's great. It's like it seems to be pretty divisive. Like people's feedback on like I guess any resemblance or anything like that. I don't think that matters totally, but I think he's great. So I'm very interested to see him in this. And just to maintain my record, John, Machine Gun Kelly confirmed he is in Bird Box.
So we're both very smart.
Yeah, we're like, Ronald. Now you got to step up, man.
I've never seen Bird Box, to be honest. I've never seen
Ronald, how does it feel to talk to such smart guys every week?
I'm overwhelmed, to be honest with you. I'm in awe. I'm in awe of you smart ass guys.
But you're right. You make a comment before about like Hulu, how they're doing all these like rip from the headline stuff. They have so much stuff like already out / in development. It's definitely become a sweet spot in a lot of their programming. And we talked a couple times on this podcast whether it was Pam and Tommy or like the Chippendales series that's coming out. Or Girl from Plainville, like all these, they have that Candy series that just wrapped up with Jessica Biel. They're like, it's a sweet spot.
And Melanie Linsky, you gotta mention the Queen.
Oh yeah, Melanie Linsky as well. It's just it seems to be a very attractive niche for them, and obviously people are watching these kinds of shows.
Yeah.
It's kind of got like a built-in promotional engine in most of them because of the headline, the relevance recently of a lot of them, and like this especially, like one of the most controversial, polarizing, popular sports figures ever, arguably, and he's still kind of in the news like pretty consistently, whether for good or bad. He still pops up in the news every year or so. But and the rest of the cast, like I saw Harvey Keitel's in this, like it's got a really great cast around him. So they've definitely done a great job with the majority of these series that we're talking about. So one about Mike Tyson. It is interesting that like some of the notes I was reading after watching the trailer, like I think it was saying like that it's like an unauthorized, what is it? I forget the term.
He immediately said,
controversial.
He said he doesn't like it.
Right. Yeah. Whatever the wording was, it was like they were talking about being something, the language in the press release, it said unauthorized, and it said like, maybe it was controversial look or something like that, but it read like it's not like a sugar coated, like Mike Tyson's not involved in this, basically.
Well, there was talk of how Pam Anderson wasn't involved in that, even though that was, if you watched it, it was a very sympathetic to Pam's point of view sort of thing.
Yeah.
You know, I think with Mike Tyson, when you said the elephant in the room, Ronald, I thought you were going to talk about the fact that he's a convicted rapist.
It looks like they're gonna address that.
No, of course they are. But what I'm saying is, I feel like that is the interesting thing, or the fascinating thing, or the potentially controversial thing about Mike Tyson for me, is that like he is both an example of someone who you certainly can condemn certain things he's done, and you can see how the situation that made him this incredible athlete also has put this pressure on him to be this sort of, I don't know, like to use his rage in this way that clearly has spilled over, and sometimes it's on the ring and sometimes it's not. But I think that like he also is a person for me, for whom the whole discussion of, well, then what does it mean when you've served your time? Like, when you've gone to jail and you've served your time. Now, he got out like 4 years earlier than he was sentenced to or something. But like, for me, that's what makes him interesting. Not the, I mean, of course, the brilliance of his boxing career and how special he was. I know a lot of guys that were excited about him when I was growing up, guys that loved to watch boxing, and, you know, that was never my thing. But I know that there were people, they were in awe of him, you know, to reuse that word. I think this other piece of it is the part that makes him kind of an interesting cultural figure, because he is, as you've said, kind of grandfathered in as this guy who can laugh about himself and who can be in the cartoons and pop up in The Hangover and all that stuff. And so, yeah, I think it'll be interesting to see how they thread that needle, because there's some people who just won't want to watch a sympathetic portrayal of him at all. And I can understand that. I can't imagine this show is going to be sugarcoated in that way. So for it not to be like sanctioned by Mike Tyson, that might be one of the areas where he just wouldn't want to tell that story. You know what I mean? He wouldn't want to relive that. And someone from the outside might want to tell the story in a more like a more clear-eyed way. But I find that really interesting. Like, I think about that all the time. Anytime someone goes to jail, and I don't even agree with the way our prison system and our justice system works in this country, but there is something interesting about that. Like, somebody goes to jail, they do their time, they come out. I find it like, well, what does it mean then? Like, what are we then? Like, who are they then? I'm not saying you should forgive someone because they went to jail. I'm saying that societally, that's the definition of doing your time, is going to prison and then being released.
Yeah, there's a weird contradiction that happens about, like, you want somebody to go to jail for their crimes. They go to jail, and now what? They're forever a pariah? Like, how does that fit into? Yeah, I'm super interested, man. Like, and of course, obviously that's a part of it. But I think, to me, that's constantly a part of Mike Tyson talk. So I didn't mean that.
Oh no, I wasn't saying you should have brought it up. I'm just saying when you were saying that, I was like, oh, but yeah, it is true. I've heard of that movie too. Literally
every time his name comes up, all right, you know, it's right, you know, it's like what. It's a weird thing, and I'm hoping. I mean, he's flinging a TV at Robin Givens in the trailer. So
yeah, no, it's insane.
I'm hoping that they tackle this in a way that feels like they're acknowledging, you know, who he was at that point in his life. So we'll see.
So let's talk about something that we've actually seen. I guess one of these schmovies. These TV shows that we've seen. What's the order we want to go into these, fellas? We should talk about which one.
Maybe we should start with something that Steve hasn't seen yet, just so we could get it out of the way.
All right. So you're saying, I think this is what happens every week now for the rest of the season of The Boys. The Schmovie Boys become the Boys for one segment. So now let's do that. Let's talk about, this is episode 4 of The Boys on Amazon, the third season. Let me see if I've got the name of this one up. I don't think I do. It was called Glorious 5-Year Plan. And in this episode, you know, we're really seeing the screws tighten of kind of the main plot of what seems to be the main plot of the season. We're seeing that like Homelander's up this week, in terms of what's going on. I don't know. I don't want to get into too many plot specifics. I know, Ronald, you've seen them all, and it's hard for you to maybe orient yourself as to where you are. So this segment might be pointless unless we can all say we've seen it, and then we're talking about it like we've all seen it at the end of the episode. But no, I would say that like now that I'm caught up to the 4th episode, I have not seen the remainder yet. But I thought that this one, again, I started to see like what the shape of the season really is going to be, because there is this whole question of, the show has this whole question of Homelander, and like, is he? And if you don't watch the show, he's sort of the Superman analog on this show. He's the kind of, the scary premise is, what if Superman were a fucking evil dick? And this is kind of the show that digs into that idea, although it has lots of other ideas to say about like superheroes are these corporate owned entities that are used for marketing and stuff. But in this one, you really see that like the thrust of this season might be, him versus all the people that he's pissing off, but he seems to really be heading them off at every turn. So it's exactly that midpoint in the season of a show where it really seems like everything's just fucked up and getting more so. But you talked a little bit about your feelings last week about how you felt watching the whole season. Do you have much of a feeling overall about any specific characters on this show that really pop for you, or that you particularly appreciate their arc?
Yeah, I mean, so Homelander's character arc feels interesting because, there's, I've always said that Captain America is what Superman was supposed to be. Like, basically the idea that, like, the unmovable force kind of in the middle of all these, like, morally great people. He's like, I'm going to stand by this. I love my friend. I'm going to protect my friend. I'm going to protect my country. I'm going to protect freedom, right? Then you have somebody that's on this spectrum that kind of is the opposite. And he is the opposite, the total opposite of Captain America. He is morally bankrupt. He will do anything to protect himself. He will, anytime that he is showing any sort of weakness emotionally, he destroys that, so...
Well, we've just met that character in the episode that is on this Friday.
Yes.
So we don't know any of the stuff you're saying about him yet.
So what do you do? What do you do when a force like Homelander can't change? You know what I mean? Like, what do you do when a person cannot change? What do you do in that situation? And I think he may think that he's being a kind person, and this kind of harkens back to the first season, but when you're so mean to somebody, can you tell if it's genuine or not? Like, you've created a standard of terrible behavior when you show any sort of emotion, when you try to show, hey, I can be okay. Do people care about that because you've been such a dick for the whole time? So I don't know, man. I say his arc is the most interesting to me because he's so consistently dickheadish. It's kind of amazing to me.
Well, right. I mean, again, I feel like that's maybe the hook of the show. Like, if you've seen anybody on this show, you've probably seen his image, that smiling, blonde, blue-eyed, like, there's something inherently creepy about that image now, the sort of overpowered, talking before, Steve, about like godlike superheroes. He's kind of like, I was noticing watching this show, like, that it's one of those scenarios where people are held in place by fear of what other people might do if the deals that they've made fall apart. There's all this sort of mutually assured destruction on that show. And that's the only reason why people aren't just taking out the people that they wish they could take out or doing what they want to do, is because there's a reason, well, if I do this, then it's going to, anger this person. We can't do this without a plan. And Homelander's kind of sitting on the top of all of that. Now, the character that we've just met on the 4th episode that I for a second I thought maybe you were talking ahead about, but maybe you weren't, Ronald. But we've just met Soldier Boy too in this episode. He's just been released from his like cryo chamber, and like we can see that story is definitely going in an interesting direction as far as like what they're trying to connect him to, as far as this mythology that is related to Mother's Milk's past, and his beef that he has with this character. But yes, they're definitely doing Captain America with with just a the boys spin, which means it's gonna be possibly offensive and it's gonna be messed up, and at some point you're gonna have a lingering shot of something awful that happens to someone's face or head.
Yes.
That's just the way the boys likes to do it.
Yeah. In this feels a little more honest about what a man frozen from that time would be like. You know, like I feel like every frozen hero would have this period of being like, where are black people? What do women do? You know, like you know, like I love that, man. Like it's a little more honest about the change that happens. It happens to people that are in current time, you know, like as times change, it's kind of this microcosm of the way that people feel about change in general. Like seeing his reaction is like a very exaggerated version of things I've heard for the last 2 or 3 years about any given thing, you know?
Mm-hmm.
So hearing him kind of go off even in this first couple, so he's just come out. I'm trying to figure out.
Yeah, right. Yeah, the episode that just aired, he hasn't really had a character bit except for in flashback.
Okay.
We've kind of seen the sort of guy that he is, and
but you see what he was. Yeah, you've seen what he was.
There's clues, but we still don't know yet fully some of the how he's going to feel different from some of these other characters yet. But that whole idea of connecting this show to a past, and it's a different past, like it's a more recent version of the past that it comes from, but it's still the past. I think that's an interesting thing too. You know, just texturally, I feel like this show has a feel to it that I found easy to watch amongst the things I've been watching recently. Especially as compared to the shows that we're going to talk about here in a minute, Miss Marvel and Obi-Wan Kenobi. I feel like The Boys was giving me that not so much groundedness, but there's something visceral about it. You know, like definitely the gore that I already mentioned. It's wet and it's usually very upsetting, and it's usually very sudden. But there is something kind of like it's doing that thing we suggested last week, which is it's providing that kind of antidote to the more straight versions of these heroic tales that we get. And I feel like right now I was particularly receptive to these new episodes of the third season. So I look forward to going through these week by week as it develops. I'm sure that I know there's something coming up this season that I've heard about that is incredibly messed up that I'm trying to get myself ready for, but I haven't gotten to it yet. So
yeah, man.
Well, it's Herogasm is the thing that I have heard about that is supposedly.
Oh God, that's like one of many. It's a lot of weird shit. The Boys is the only show besides maybe Severance that I've seen Aaron get like giddy about. Like, oh my God, you have access to it. Oh, you know, she gets really excited about how crazy this show can get. Yeah, the Herogasm is one of the weirdest things I've ever seen. So yeah, I think that's absolutely up there.
The thing that happened at the very beginning of the new season with
I wasn't ready for that.
With the termite. Yeah.
I wasn't ready for that.
They
Steve, have you seen any of it? Have you seen any of it yet?
No. Not
okay.
They answer that question about what would happen if Ant-Man went inside somebody and did a certain, and like.
Yeah. I saw somebody post something on Twitter about the question.
Yeah, the question's been answered, and now we know what that looks like. What that looks like. Well,
Thanks,
let's talk about something that Steve has seen. We'll get back to we'll become the boys again next week probably.
Yeah.
What are we now? Let's be the Miss Marvel boys.
Okay.
So today, 2 days ago, if you're listening to this show, we got to see the first episode of the new Marvel series on Disney Plus, Miss Marvel. This is a brand new character with a brand new set of circumstances, and it has a sort of different feel from the other Marvel stuff, or at least from the live action stuff. It was reminding me of kind of the Spider-Verse feel. It also reminded me of what was it, the Mitchells versus the Machines.
Exactly. That's exactly what I thought too.
A very similar feel to that. But yeah, maybe Steve, talk a little bit about what that feel is, and also how did you feel about that feel?
Yeah, I mean, so just the idea like that this kind of exists is a good balance to, I don't know, like the opportunity that Disney and Marvel afford themselves by having the ability to have these series on Disney Plus. We talk about it all the time, but like having this variety of tone, of themes, of characters, and things like that. So, I think this is kind of, what's the word? This is a great showcase for something like a breath of fresh air to me. Like it felt like a breath of fresh air. Seeing a show focused around a younger lead, a younger cast in general. We've seen plenty of cast in like high school. We've seen Spider-Man, we've seen all these things, but there's something about Miss Marvel and Kamala Khan. Is that the character's name?
Yes.
Khan. Yeah, like I just really responded so positively and like pleasantly, and just I was like smiling a lot watching this episode. And I think that that's something that Marvel really needs right now. I think that we've been talking so much about, what they're doing with Moon Knight and how that ties to this and that, and like, looking for those connections. And I think that this show starts this first episode off very directly talking about this girl's obsession with Captain Marvel and, with the Avengers and like the Avengers play in this world and this con that they go to. And there's just so much love for the characters in the MCU that we all love from this character. So I love the idea of that. You got a little bit of that with Hawkeye. And, I just feel like it's got some similarities to that in that sense. But yeah, like John was saying, the idea of, this character who makes kind of like these YouTube videos, mixing like stop motion and animation. And you see that animation on the screen in the show as she's talking with her best friend. And I don't know, there's just something really fresh and fun about this. And what's the series on what's the Mindy Kaling series?
Never Have I Ever.
Yeah, even that, like I felt like that a little bit, just in terms of the high school drama and the high school comedy, and like the fighting with your parents, and just this dilemma of like trying to fit in, but yet balance like the expectations of your family, and a family really kind of invested in their culture, and seeing that culture on the screen, and how big and how present it is in this show, I think is like so just fresh to me. It just felt very different and very I think it just did a great job of like investing me immediately in this girl and wanting to see what she figures out and what she finds out. And yeah, I don't know, man. Like I loved it actually. Like I thought this first episode was great. And the Spider-Verse comparison, the Mitchells versus Machine comparison, like the way they show like the friends' conversations through text in like the street signs and the neon lights and things like that. I just think that that's so inventive, and I don't think it's really something that Marvel, at least in the MCU, has done a lot with, and it kind of makes it feel even more modern for the age demographic of this generation.
Yeah,
that is just something that they haven't done yet. And not being of that generation, I can look at it and be like, this is like really, really cool to see how they're going to do this and try to appeal to another demographic, another generation of MCU fans by literally having a fangirl as the main character and a superhero. Like it's a perfect match or mix or whatever. I just think it has the potential to be an incredible series. And,
well, even if it doesn't like appeal to the age demographic that it would seem like maybe it would be aimed at, even if it's just a bunch of middle-aged people that are opening their hearts to like a teenage Muslim girl superhero, I feel like that is a step in the right direction.
For sure.
But I do think, like, I watched it with my 14-year-old son today, and he enjoyed it. I did not ask him, as I planned to, like, do you feel like this is representative of anything real, or does this feel like old people writing about kids, but it has that freshness, even if it's just because it moved fast, and it was like that scene with like the high school counselor or whatever that person's job was just really fun and funny, and it just feels like it's laying out this groundwork. You're right, I did think of Davey from Never Have I Ever a little bit, and I definitely thought of those other projects that I mentioned, of just like, this is like, it's visually trusting a young audience to parse a lot of information and to understand the sort of visual language that it's diving into. And it did make it feel, as we often say about, honestly, we've said this about most of these Marvel shows when we've seen the first episode, that it feels like it's doing something different stylistically. This feels like the most different in a way. Maybe WandaVision would be the other one that kind of has a claim to that, of just feeling different. But this feels like it's in the MCU. It's not a trick like WandaVision was. It's not a meta thing, and yet the visual style of it does reflect the protagonist in a way that is just feels good. What about you, Ronald? What was your feeling about Miss Marvel?
I've seen her depicted, I think, 2 or 3 times. 2 in cartoons. Earth's Mightiest Earth's Mightiest Heroes. I've also played the Avengers game. The game starts with Kamala going to the convention, and that came out years ago.
Yeah, Henry said her room on the show looked exactly like her room on the game. Or
yeah,
very close to it.
It's crazy. Her father takes her to the convention in the video game.
Is he dressed as the Hulk?
No, I wish he was just dressed in his regular clothes.
That was great.
I love that scene, by the way.
Yeah, it's good.
Now, obviously, having a daughter, a black daughter, and the idea that, this is one of the coolest things I've ever seen. A couple years ago, I saw a white kid dressed as the Black Panther. The idea that in a year or so, or a couple months, I could see a little kid, doesn't matter what race they are, dressed as Miss Marvel.
Right. Blows
my mind, man. Like, Muslim, Disney is spoon feeding people, this cool idea of this is the first time that some people have been in a Muslim's house. This is the first time that they've seen a Muslim teenager. This is the first time that they've seen a family, kind of interact. They may have been all these preconceived notions about what a Muslim family is. So the idea that Disney is giving this to people, for some people, the first time ever in their lives, and doing it in a way that's beautiful and fun. Erin's from New Jersey. She's like, when the fuck does New Jersey look like that? But, the fact that it looks beautiful, and like I said, like, this is going to be one of the first things I show my daughter, besides the cartoon. The cartoon's really cool. It's amazing.
This
and not to mention, this is the voice. This is the voice. The first episode of this, I'm going to show her this first episode of the second season first. And then I'm like, to understand this, you must first go back. But yeah, I not only that, it's well executed. It was fun. And if you have an open mind, it's going to be incredible for you, man. Like, this is what superheroes were for me. They opened doors for me. They introduced me to new cultures, ideas, and this is what it's doing for people. It's like a vehicle. People are going to learn so many things. Somebody may see this show, see this Muslim person that they may have had a terrible idea about, and they're like, you know what? I saw Miss Marvel, like, this is not what I thought it was. You know what I mean? Like, the idea of that is fucking crazy, but that's what good TV does, good movies do. They show you a piece of the world that you haven't seen before. And it does it so beautifully, man. I should not have liked this as much as I did. I was like, this is gonna be shit. This is gonna be a kiddie thing. I saw it and I was like, this is what I needed. I got a little emotional, to be honest with you, man. Like,
yeah.
When I was a kid, there were no brown anybody. There was no brown superhero. There were no brown superheroes, man.
I mean, I definitely don't take that for granted. I definitely don't take that for granted when it comes to, like, just seeing something that is, like, for me, and this is why I hate what was it, the movie Turning Red? Was that the movie? That, like, there was some
weird about that?
There was that one critic who said this is too niche because it's about, like, an Asian family and it's going through a very specific thing, and and that's such bullshit, because when it's a compellingly told story, people have been coddled.
Yeah.
I guess not people. White people have been coddled by culture so much, by focusing so much on white people and
Yeah.
mainstream white culture, to the extent that like that's an absurd notion to say out loud, to say that like this movie wasn't about a white person or a white boy, and so I can't relate to it. I see a show like this and I get so immediately invested. I'm like, it just to me proves that that's just bullshit, that people get up in their head about that there's an agenda, a PC agenda that's trying to represent other people to them. But if you watch the show, it couldn't be more of like a universal, not that I'm trying to say this show should appeal to bigots and assholes. I'm just saying it's weird that people are so resistant to something that is so like down the middle pleasurable. There's nothing, I mean, the show has a fresh style, but there's nothing particularly edgy or confrontational about this material. It is very heartwarming. And my hot take about this show would be that I'm more interested in watching these kids coexist in this world that's been established.
Yeah.
Like it feels like the MCU, and yet I'm seeing how kids react to being in that world. I almost don't need her to become a superhero. I almost became like less interested when like blasts were shooting out of her hands and stuff than I was when she was hanging out on the roof with her friend. So to me, I think that's a testament to that Marvel thing that they do so well. And maybe it's a testament to that Marvel problem if it continues to go on, and then it's the superhero side of the show that's not as fresh, not as different as the character side. But yes, she instantly became another MCU character that I'm like down. I'm like, I like her friend Bruno. I do love her family. I like that struggle between a traditional family beliefs and like somebody who's trying to carve their own path, because the parents aren't villains exactly, but they can be antagonistic to her because they aren't going to accept what she wants to do. At some point you imagine they're going to have to let her be her own person. But no, I think it was just a really fun, I think we all kind of seems like we had a similar experience with it. It just hooked me with its energy, and pretty much all the way through to the end, I was feeling that sort of buzzy feeling of just, oh wow, this is moving at such a nice clip, and it's just likable and different, and you don't need to give us another white male superhero for a little while if you don't want to, Marvel. Like we're fine without it. We've got enough of them already coming down the pike. I like this.
What people don't understand too, last thing I'll say about this is that everything that a non-white person watches is niche. Everything that we watch is niche. Everything that we watch on TV that isn't like our culture is niche. It's like this isn't something that I'm familiar with, but you're asking me to come into this world. I can't identify with it I can identify with it as a human. I understand the human interactions, but I'm talking about you're asking me to come into this world that I don't know. And that's what white people do not understand about this stuff. It's all that. This is every experience that I've ever had. Every movie that I've seen, pretty much. 90% of them. But that doesn't mean that I hate them or I'm resentful. But that's what it is. I have to take a journey into my imagination in a place where this kid is jumping on top of a car and a cop hasn't come, or this kid has done this and they haven't gotten arrested. I'm stretching, I'm imagining a world that I don't live in. So that's come into our world, baby.
Well, what did her parents say to her in this episode? Her parents say to her, "Join reality, join reality." I say that. I've said that to my teenage son a few times, and I was like, "Oh boy, the parents just said this in this show," and it was presented as one of those like parent things that you say. But it's true that sometimes you just want someone to join reality. But yes, you're saying, "Come on, whites,
come on, baby, come on, baby,
join reality."
No, but it's an accomplishment, man. It feels special, and I'm glad that it's here.
One thing we've talked about it with other shows, and like they kind of do these companion podcasts. I can't believe that Marvel doesn't have the Scott Lang, the Big Me Little Me podcast going somehow in tandem with this show.
Yeah,
the mention of it in this episode, I had
right.
A good
she
laugh.
said he seems like a pretty cool guy.
Yeah, seems like a cool guy. He's got this like side hustle going with a podcast. It's like, we need to hear that. Come on now, let's do this.
I actually thought
I'm sure Paul Rudd would be game.
I thought the convention that she went to, outside of like certain aspects, felt more movie-ish than a real convention. But I thought that when she hit that convention floor, it felt like, I don't know. I feel like they've invested a lot in giving this show its own world, and that scene felt pretty big for a scene that could have been really chintzy, and they could have tried not to show you so much. I felt like that that was an example of I don't know, this show kind of doing something in this world that, yes, of course that would happen on some level. And I've heard some people say they don't quite understand the way they're treated, almost the way we treat fictional characters in our world. But if superheroes were real, people would culturally latch onto them in a question like that. It's like the sunnier version of what's happening on The Boys, honestly. It's very similar, but a different direction of saying that they would become brands, basically,
Yeah.
Well, speaking of a brand, let's talk about Star Wars. Let's close out with the latest episode of Obi-Wan Kenobi. This is episode 4 on, and we're getting 2 more.
Oh no, Steve!
Oh, what were you guys talking about again?
Obi-Wan. Tensions built. The third sister has kidnapped Leia and is trying to get information from her about these safe houses that exist all around the galaxy. It was an interesting episode, but it felt like it was trying to do a lot. And did it deliver? I got some action. I got a lot of drowning. I don't know. What did you guys think of the episode? Steve, I want you to see.
No, I did not like this episode. I feel like some of the criticisms in the earlier episodes that, like, I think even John mentioned briefly, like the ability kind of like, I'm looking past some of this stuff just because I'm so excited to see more of this character and what could be with Darth Vader and whatnot. But I feel like in this episode, some of those things really stood out again to me, and I feel like I don't know. I just felt like the story wasn't really moving forward enough, and I almost felt like the Vader Obi-Wan scene in the last episode maybe came too soon to then have this happen, and it kind of felt like a really big pullback considering there's only 2 episodes left. Yeah, and I don't know, just some things really stood out. Like some of the action stuff was very sloppy to me, like that whole corridor scene where he's batting the bullets or the lasers out of the way, like just constantly. And even when she's doing it, what is it, third sister? Like, even when she's doing it, like on the bay, on the dock,
on the bay.
Dock, they like did it even when that's happening, like it's just and it's like the coverage is weird, and I don't know. Some of the filmmaking is standing out to me more as the episodes go along. Yeah, and I don't know, man. This was not a good episode for me. The run up to this, I was very high on the show. Yeah. I hope it's maybe just a bit of a valley here, but this one just didn't work for me. It was too much spinning wheels, not moving the story, and a lot of the same for me.
What about you, Ronald?
Too many cooks in the kitchen. It felt like too many things were happening at once, and I kind of wish it would have focused on, I don't know, it felt like espionage, like the espionage version of Star Wars, and I think some of the delight that I have in Star Wars movies is them knowing sometimes to move the camera a little bit, like, them lingering on the Bay Area where she was dodging the lasers for a long time was like, man, this would have been cool for a cutaway. It just felt like you start to feel the goofiness of it when you see something for too long. You know what I mean? Like, yeah, there's only so long somebody could do this, without it looking kind of weird. And I think that's kind of what I think you're talking about. There's the paces that a movie would go through, the editing that it would go through. This doesn't have, and you could feel it in kind of the production of it, and it felt like it needed a couple more takes of some of those action scenes. Like, whoa, this doesn't. We need this to be a little more fast, a little more like. I need Ewan McGregor to feel a little more agile. He's young right now. He's not like old. He's not like this. Isn't the guy we see.
Yeah, I agree.
Well, he's supposed to be like getting back into it, but I do know what you mean. Like well, see, I feel like I might be I think I feel average the same as you guys about the series. I think for me, this episode worked a lot better than it did for either of you because I liked the feel. I liked the shadowy, creepy, eerie feel of the Inquisitor's base that they were sneaking into. I liked Obi-Wan diving into the water and coming up through the bottom. There were just some little mechanical things that felt like that, like when you're playing like a Star Wars video game and you get to explore the world a little bit more and you're doing things that you don't normally see. I liked Tala emerging as a kind of just a cool character. Like she seems like the kind of character that they might be like using so they could kill someone like that off and just have them be in it for a few episodes. I like the way she's turning out to be someone who I could kind of like her and Obi-Wan, bouncing off each other. I like seeing that Leia is sort of always been Leia. And I feel like this week, I liked though that they showed that she still was a scared little girl in one way, but that she also was not going to give up the farm unless she absolutely had to. I think last week was the one that got me feeling like I need to create a new category. On this show, we've had hold up, which means no go. We've had wait for it, which means it's okay. We've had go ahead, which means it's really good. And then we've had you were warned, which means, like, hey, watch this, but so that we can talk about it. I'm not saying it's good. And I think a new category that I should have, which is it's good, but I'm grumpy about it. Like
that's how I felt.
I was feeling that way last week though, but I thought the battle, the fight, the meeting between Darth Vader and Obi-Wan was incredibly clumsily executed. That whole scene with the fire and like why Darth Vader didn't walk around a 10-foot bit of flame or why the droid was moving so slow about picking Obi-Wan up. I know we're supposed to believe that like Darth Vader is like toying with him or is going, now's not the time or something. But it just doesn't make sense. None of it makes sense from a story standpoint. That you would have the Inquisitors going out and they're supposed to catch Obi-Wan, but they're not supposed to be too interested in Obi-Wan, but they're supposed to be looking for Jedi and they're supposed to be finding Obi-Wan. And then you also have Vader just popping out in the middle of that. And yet he's not really that hip to what the Inquisitors are doing. And yet they kind of answer to him. And so he's going to get mad at him when they let him go. But he also is like, you're not supposed to be chasing him. I just feel like it's a big mess. I just feel like that side of it doesn't make any sense. And to me, last week, I liked if you told me on paper, oh, they're going to have an encounter and Obi-Wan's not ready for it, and Vader basically demolishes him, and then some freak occurrence happens that allows Obi-Wan to escape while Vader is kind of disoriented or something. Okay, but Vader just kind of standing there. I mean, I know we're supposed to think he's weakened in the suit and stuff, but I felt like he couldn't jump over that or run through that, or it just felt weird. And then the way he's like, now's not the time, and just walks away. It felt like it totally neutered the sense of excitement I had earlier when Vader was like walking down the city street and like breaking kids' necks and shit like that. I was just like, holy shit, Vader is so scary. And then this big moment happens, and I'm not saying the fight had to be this crazy battle. I'm just saying I think they could have executed that. And so often I think the action on these shows is executed in a way where you go, oh, I can see what happened, but not in such a way that you feel the momentum. You were talking about the pacing. Whether it should be because it's a movie or a show, I don't know. But I feel like Star Wars has always trafficked in action sequences that make your heart beat faster and pacing that's like immaculate. And I think that these shows, they just haven't, and I think this goes to The Mandalorian too. Sorry, people who say The Mandalorian is the best Star Wars thing ever. It's got the same TV show problems. It's like I look past a lot of it because I'm liking the world building and I'm still on board with this show. But I do think there's a question of like, is there ever going to be one of these shows that just feels tightly structured and has a good solid feel throughout, and I don't know. I don't think Marvel or Star Wars has done it yet with any of these shows quite yet, where they've had like a sureness of tone that even watching The Boys, I was thinking like this show knows what it is, and the tone is right, and the feel of it and the texture of it is right for what it is. They know what it is.
Yeah.
I don't know that they've quite nailed it. I mean, as much as I've loved or liked all of these things, I feel like Obi-Wan Kenobi is another, like a chance it had at being something a little different, a little better than The Herd. I still think it has elements that are like cinematic, and the story is still one I'm interested in seeing. And if I squint really hard, I can imagine they executed that fight last week better, where it felt like something was going on and Obi-Wan escaped rather than just like Vader just let him go. But I want to understand more what's going on between Vader and the Inquisitors, and like what they're supposed to be doing and how it's supposed to be different, and all that stuff feels just really, really messy to me. And then I do agree with what you guys were saying about some of the action. Even this week, there were some moments where it just lingers too long on a shot, or it's just staged in such an odd way that you don't have that feel that this is like, oh, they worked out these sequences incredibly. However, I felt like this week, I like that espionage feel. I think the thing that bugged me more, Steve, was the fact that, once again, this reminds me so much of Grogu getting kidnapped for an episode in some moment or two. You know, it's like, okay, so Leia got kidnapped and now they have her back. And of course, now they're being tracked. I guess spoilers for Obi-Wan. If you didn't watch Obi-Wan, certainly those people have jumped off already. I just feel like it does feel like a little bit of going back and forth story-wise. Like as we did get to see like a different setting, and we have moved on beyond, like we haven't spent all this season on Tatooine like I was afraid. So I like that aspect. But I do feel that story-wise, it's just been, okay, they're trying to get away, and then they get caught, and then they get away again. You know, it doesn't feel like there is this great mission happening or this great story that's building on as it goes. It feels more episodic than...
It's weird. It's weird. I don't know. It's something. And you're right. It does kind of happen with the Marvel series as well. It's like there's this weird ability, like the pacing in one element, or on one hand, the pacing is a concern, and especially like when you hear about what this is, and it's only 6 episodes, and you know. Really, we're kind of in the same story. You know, it really hasn't moved that much further along, with the exception of the whole tracking element, you know, and maybe some more development with Tala. But like, I just feel like it's becoming a problem that like, it just seems like even with having a lesser number of episodes, it's like, there's not enough there to really even warrant needing even 6 episodes. Like, could it, you know what I mean? Like, yeah. It's like they're making them less and less and less, and it's like, well, then should this be a series then? Because is the budget not there to make 2 great hours of something instead of making 4.5 hours of something that's just good or okay?
Yeah. Right.
It's like it's like where is that? What is the methodology in kind of like deciding that? Because like, yes, I think people want to see more Obi-Wan Kenobi. I don't know if people really people asked for it, but I don't know like if you really wanted more Boba Fett. Like I was pretty low on that show,
right? But
I mean, Obi-Wan is like a no-brainer, and like the idea of what this show is and could be is interesting. And you're 2/3 of the way through this short season of a series, and it's like. I don't know. It's just
it's like Moon Knight for me, feeling. Where we got to the end of that season, and I said to you, I think I said it on the show.
Yeah.
I don't know if this feels like it should have been a movie,
right?
Or if it feels like it should have been more episodic and like a 12-episode season that spends more time in this world and explores it more. Right. And I'm kind of feeling like definitely there doesn't seem to be a lot of story and a lot of ideas. Like Moon Knight had a lot of ideas competing for time in 6 episodes. Yeah. This show doesn't quite seem to have that, but I do think if it needs to either feel more like a show or more like a movie for me to feel like I understand where I am with the story. Because as it is sort of like a movie that got stretched out, and yet a movie that, if a movie was 2/3 of the way in, you might have expected to see more than we've seen in 4 hours almost, or whatever it is of this show, 3.5 hours of runtime. So I think that we all are very excited about Ewan McGregor still. And I also think that the shots of Hayden Christensen in the back to tank, or in whatever Darth Vader's like healing tank is, I think that scene that's always going to be an arresting image. And that's, that's fun and creepy, but they did that in like the 2nd episode. So going back to that, and this episode was interesting to me, but
Right.
all it tells me is, yes, we're going to get more Vader as the show rolls along. That wasn't like the one scene. So I don't require the greatest lightsaber battle of all time, but I do want these two characters meeting up again to have more weight than what happened last week feels like it had for me.
Yeah,
that was sort of like it released the tension I was beginning to feel of what's going to happen when these characters meet, and yet it didn't satisfy the hunger for what's going to happen when these characters meet. So it's just it feels like the storytelling is just more slapdash than you would think. Like all these great TV shows with all these great writers. Why are these shows?
I
not
thought the
crafted
same
better.
thing earlier. Like when I was telling Aaron that, I was just like, for all of the, like last week, I think we mentioned like that Star Wars is kind of becoming like a TV franchise, and it seems like that's where they're really putting a lot of effort. And it's like, and they were kind of forced to do that because of how haphazardly the new trilogy was handled, and not having a full story planned out and having the good time, or having time to really plan that out and execute it. So now that they've pivoted to the series that they have on Disney Plus, it's like, how do they not have the best writers' rooms? How do they not have like the best available thing? And even with Obi-Wan, like knowing of not so much troubled, but like the challenging path it took to get on screen, because like they basically were at a point where they like stopped and rewrote the entire series.
Yeah.
Because of reported similarities to like a lot of the story points in The Mandalorian.
Which is crazy that they got that far without knowing that already.
Exactly. That's my point though. Like that's like, where is the oversight for planning?
It's very sloppy.
For projecting 5 years from now where X, Y, and Z will be. And not even just that, but like you said, John, like how do so many other shows have such amazing writing and amazing like just storytelling
with a quarter of the budget?
Right. It's just like, and it's like, how can Star Wars not afford to do that? Or how can Lucasfilm not afford to do that? And I mean, in some ways, same thing could be said for the MCU and what they're doing with some of their shows. Like they all kind of suffer from a similar problem. And I don't know, it sucks because like I really, really was hoping this show would really kind of be one of the most consistent ones, and
like a standard bearer of sorts. Yeah.
And it's just like this episode, more than any prior, for me at least, it really kind of broke a little bit for me. So I don't know. Well, I'm excited to see where it goes still, and I mean, it's 2 episodes left. We'll see how it wraps it up and where it goes from there. But definitely a step back for me. Definitely a step back.
Well, when you can feel that the excitement about the hype, about the idea is slowly leaking out, and then the show, 4 episodes in, has not given you anything to really replace that feeling. It's like that feeling you have if you're ever like, well, I'm excited to have all this free time, or I'm excited for the weekend, and then you get to the weekend and you're sort of like, what was I excited about? Like I still need something to do to be excited. Just because it's the weekend isn't exciting sometimes. And I think this is that way. It's like I'm excited because it's Obi-Wan and it's Star Wars and it's Ewan McGregor, and now that has kind of leaked off at 4 episodes in. Now you got to have there's got to be a there, totally, for us to be excited about it.
Yeah, that's absolutely correct. So hopefully they got something. Hopefully they have something planned.
I hope Lola the robot doesn't get destroyed. That's the one thing that I'm invested in.
Yeah.
Yeah, I got to get the toy for my kid. She's like obsessed with that little robot.
Of course you have to. Of course they knew what they were doing with that.
Oh my God. Geniuses.
Yeah.
Bastards. All right, cool. Well,
that's that.
We've got 2 more to go for Obi-Wan, so we'll see where we end up with him. But I did want to mention, I mentioned it a little bit at the top of the show, but I did see Top Gun Maverick, and no surprise, I absolutely loved it.
Did you picture yourself in the movie the way that I did?
I'm actually going to tell you guys, like, I'm going to probably be mustached next week. I'm probably going to just go down to a mustache. I've been teasing Aaron a little bit. To the mustache rooster look, I'm probably going to go with that for a little bit, see how I do. But yeah, I don't know, man. Like we were talking before we recorded, but if you haven't seen Top Gun Maverick, I can't recommend it enough, personally. And with what's coming up soon in theaters, like, if you want to see it on the premium formats like Dolby or IMAX, you've only got a little bit of time to do that. Maybe by the time this episode comes out, limited time, maybe in certain cities it's still available. Maybe it'll come back around on, as the summer rolls along because of how well it's doing in theaters. But if you can just see it in theaters, I'd recommend it. It's a great summer movie to see in a theater. And we had like I said, we saw it in one of the Dolby screens, and just like to feel that sound and the way, the special laser projection, and just it looked amazing on the screen. All the aerial stuff is just phenomenal. And yeah, it got me emotional a handful of times. So if you like Top Gun, if you like just like really great action, high flying airplanes, any of that stuff, Tom Cruise, whatever it might be. Obviously the movie's appealing. It's overperforming, like historically overperforming. It had the lowest drop in its second weekend for any movie ever that made over $100 million in its first weekend, more than any MCU film, any fast anything. It completely blew it away. A 29% drop, which is unheard of. So I'm happy to see it doing so well, and hopefully it continues to. It may be $1 billion movie, which would be bonkers, and it's very, very, very possible that will happen.
Wow.
Yeah, and yeah, I loved it, man. And John, you pegged every part of it for me precisely, and you could have predicted it. You couldn't have predicted it better. It's tried and true. It's probably my favorite movie I've seen so far this year.
Wow. Awesome. I can't wait to see it.
Yeah.
Cannot wait.
It's great. And honestly, like seeing the Mission Impossible trailer before that movie, like God, I can't wait. It sucks that's a year away.
I know that movie looks so big and well done.
God.
And it's like, okay, I'm loving it. Like I'm loving it that somebody is out there doing stunts and filming stuff as much real stuff as possible. I mean, that's what I like about these types of movies. And I think Mission Impossible is more my jam because I like that thriller plot line. But I also think that, like, if you want to, what you just said, a movie that's doing so well, word of mouth has been so strong. This is that. Like, it's strange that so many people are happy to see a movie like this do well, because this is no indication at all that small movies are coming back or mid-sized adult films are coming back. None of that. But it is an indication that you don't have to have, comic book characters in a movie for it to make this kind of money. Even though it's debatable that Tom Cruise is almost playing a comic book character. But we know this is a different kind of nostalgia. This is more the 80s excess. Just a different. It's a different thing. It's a different thing than we are used to seeing. Pull these kind of numbers that you're talking about, Steve. And so I think it is in some way reassuring, just that yes, like an old-fashioned Hollywood blockbuster that can be made sort of for adults and doesn't have to involve a bunch of IP. Even though I guess technically Maverick and all that stuff's IP, but it does feel different.
It's just a different level. You know what I mean? I think it's just. The modern age of IP, obviously it pulls from source material that goes beyond the 80s. But it's just a different way that it's kind of being mined and developed. I feel like whether it's a superhero or a dinosaur or, a fast car, whatever these franchises are that are the $1 billion franchises, the idea that, a movie from the 80s that isn't really a well-known, like, great movie. It's got its following, it's got its fan base. And it was a huge movie of that time, that, 30 some years later can come back with a movie that, definitely acknowledges that excess in fun ways and how silly some of that stuff is. And then on the other hand, kind of finds a way to take the franchise in a more serious, more action oriented, like the last 30 minutes of the movie is phenomenal. Like, I feel like whether you think the movie's cheesy, whatever criticism you'll find in it, and there are problems with the movie, I'm sure, and I can acknowledge some of them, but like, I feel like that when they go on that last mission, where they go on the mission in the end of the movie, I feel like that last half an hour is just pure action, adrenaline, popcorn movie. Like, it's great. It's so good. And it's why Tom Cruise is a movie star. Honestly, it really is. Like, he just completely knocks it out of the park, especially in that last half an hour. But yeah, man, I loved it for sure. I honestly can't wait to see it again. I want to go see it again.
So I'm going to suggest a Disney Plus spinoff series from Top Gun that follows the local piano teacher in the area who teaches everybody how to play Great Balls of Fire.
Yeah. No,
Called
no,
Goodness
totally.
Gracious is the name of the show.
You're onto something.
That.
I mean, we gotta start developing this. Somehow we'll get somehow we'll get the rights to it.
I said Disney Plus, but technically
You
it should
did.
be on Schmovie Plus. Technically we
Or
should be developing this for
it should be on what is Paramount Plus or
Paramount Plus. But people like that Plus shit, don't they?
Yeah, it's really
That's
really
so weird.
cool to just add plus to the end of it
Yeah.
because it's extra. You know what I mean? It's like that good.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
All right. Did you guys see anything else you want to mention? That's the only other thing I really saw besides finishing Stranger Things. But we should talk about that after the season ends, I guess.
Yeah.
Yeah.
No, I'm
And
good.
Ron has time to catch up. You good, Ron?
Yeah, I'm good.
All right, cool. Moviesmovie.com is the website. You can go there to find the podcast options in terms of subscribing on whatever podcast platform you prefer to use. We should be available on all of them. You can listen right there on that website as well. All of our library, our catalog is all available right there. And also jump onto the links for our social media for the YouTube piece, which I mentioned earlier. If you want to watch the video element of this podcast to get all the great facial expressions that we provide during the recording of every podcast episode.
Ones such as this and this.
Yeah. But see, you gotta go subscribe to see what John just was talking about.
Right.
It's just like the ultimate tease.
We all just knocked it out of the park.
We killed it, guys. It's what we thrive at, and it's like really our strong suit is the facial expressions.
It's what we do.
We should just have an audio podcast where we only do different facial expressions. That would succeed, right?
That would
kill
finally
it,
send people to the video version, surely.
Yeah. I mean, okay, we got to talk about that off the air here. Yeah, if you can subscribe, if you go the audio route and you subscribe on whatever platform you're using, if there's an option to leave a review or a rating or a share button available, which most of them have, the little like box with the arrow pointing up. If you hit that and share the podcast with a friend or a family member, or someone you just like or dislike, I don't know, just someone.
Someone you just
Go
met.
either way. It could go either way. If they have an active cell phone plan and can receive text messages or emails.
This could
Just
be the
share it with-
icebreaker that you're looking for.
Yeah.
It could be.
It would be appreciated, obviously. We'll be back next week with a new episode. And as always, you made our day. Thanks.